everyone, and welcome to episode 20 of the Novels and Needles podcast. I'm your host, Heather, and this is my podcast that's about what I've been reading and what I've been knitting, which are two of the things that bring me the most joy and peace in my life and allow me to kind of have the most level of relaxation. So I want to say welcome to all the new viewers. Thank you so much for checking me out. If you like what you see, please hit subscribe or give me a thumbs up. That would be awesome. And I want to say welcome back to any returning viewers. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy schedule to spend a little bit of it with me. Today is Friday, May 19th, and it has been 2 weeks since I podcast. And some of you may have noticed that I did something a little different last week. I did what I'm calling a vlogcast. I don't know if I made that word up or if that's a word that's out there, but that's what I'm calling it. And since my life has gotten really crazy and really busy and a lot of things are changing, I'm not going to be able to podcast every week. And I'm definitely not going to have the content related podcast every week with things that are changing. I'm starting a new career. We're going to be moving. So there's a lot of change that's happening. But I want to keep this as part of my routine because it's something that I really enjoy and that just brings me a lot of pleasure. And it's something that I like to do. So I want to keep doing that. So on the off weeks that I'm not podcasting, I'm going to try and do this little vlogcast where I will do little vlogs throughout the week and then on Friday just kind of compile them together into one thing. So hopefully every week you see something from me, be it a podcast or be it the vlogcast. I think in the vlogcast I may use that and take a few more liberties and talk about some other things besides just reading and knitting. Especially since I'm on this crazy journey with a new career, I may talk about that a little bit. And since my new career is that of a pastor in the United Methodist Church, there may be some faith type stuff included in that, but by no means will it be any proselytizing or anything like that. It'll just kind of be sharing my journey for anyone who wants to see it and for myself as well, because I think it'll be kind of cool maybe once I'm further down the road to go back and look at that and just kind of see how things developed. So you can find me on social media. I am most active on Instagram and Ravelry, and I will put those names up on the screen. I do want to make a note that I did change my Ravelry my Instagram handle from Pearl Ridge Fibers to Heathered Knits because Pearl Ridge Fibers was originally going to be something that I used as a potential business title for yarn dyeing or whatnot. But again, with things changing, that's all gonna be on hold because life has gotten extremely crazy. But I won't go into that here. So just a note to everyone, if you've noticed that change, if you're one of my followers, that's why. It's still me, I'm still the same person, just a different handle on Instagram. We do have a Ravelry group for the podcast, so if you search Novels and Needles Ravelry Group, you should be able to find us. Please join. I'd like to see that group get a little bit more active, and I need to think about ways to do that. There's an introduction thread, so please introduce yourself. Tell me a few things about yourself, like how you started knitting, whatnot. Say hello. Show notes are always posted there, as well as any other information about knit-alongs or anything like that we might be having, although that's all kind of on hiatus at the moment, as I said, because my life is getting kind of crazy. I keep saying that. So I think that's pretty much everything that I needed to talk about at the top of the show, and I think from there I'll go ahead and jump into the things that I have been reading. Books that I have been reading, I did finish the 2 books that were in progress last week, so I'm going to talk about both of those. I will note both books are book number 2 in series, so there is potential for there to be spoilers about the first book in this series, especially when I'm talking about the Red Queen series. There will definitely be spoilers about the first book, so I just want anyone to be aware of that going forward. I will, as always, put timestamps below to when I'm talking about the different books, so you can skip ahead if you aren't interested in one or you don't want something to be spoiled. Pardon me. So the other thing with books is I have gotten a huge amount of books for my class that I'm going to be taking. I am not going to talk about those books unless there's something that I find that is particularly interesting and that I would like to share. But my reading of novels is probably going to go down in the next few weeks because I have a lot of books that I have to read for class and I have a lot of work that I have to do for my class. So the audiobook will still stay consistent, but the physical book that I'm reading I may not be getting through very quickly. So that's just kind of a disclaimer for my novels section. I apologize to those people who this is your favorite part or this is the only part that you watch. I'm going to try to keep this content as up as I can. If nothing else, I'm reading books with my kids. I can talk about the books that I'm reading with my kids, and you guys can get kind of a perspective on some children's books. But the audiobooks, those will continue because I can listen to those while I drive or do work around the house or whatnot. So audiobooks will continue. It's just those physical books, I'm not so sure how long it was going to take me. So with that little disclaimer over, I'll go ahead and start talking about what it is that I have been reading. And the first book that I'm going to talk about that I finished is book number 2 in the Red Queen series, and that is Glass Sword. Again, there will be spoilers about the first book, The Red Queen, so if you do not want that, please skip ahead to the next book that I'll be talking about. So the Glass Sword, it's just Glass Sword. I want to call it the Glass Sword for some reason, but I don't know why. So this continues off where the Red Queen left off with Mare and Cal having escaped from Maven. And to give you a little bit of background on the world that this is set in, I talked about this last week, but I'm just going to touch on it real quickly here. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. The world is divided up into two classes, for lack of a term, of people, silvers and reds. Silvers are kind of the ruling elite class, and they have silver blood and special abilities, such as the ability to control fire or heal or something along those lines. And then there's the common working class, which are the reds, and they have red blood, and they do not have special abilities. Except that it is discovered that there is a section of reds who do have silver abilities, and those silver abilities are in fact stronger than normal silver abilities. And that is where Mare Barrow, the main character of the story, comes in. She is what they're calling a new blood, and she has the ability to control and harness electricity. So Cal and Mare are on the run from Maven, who is looking to capture them both. And they are in the process of going throughout the kingdom of Norta collecting new bloods who are like Mare and trying to gather them together to fight against Maven and to try to alter the class balance and to kind of take the silvers down a few notches and reestablish a new ruling structure. So it's basically a revolution. And they are doing this and trying to stay ahead of Maven, who knows where these so-called new bloods are, and he's trying to find them and destroy them because he doesn't want the existence of these people who are both to be known, because that could undermine his ruling. So they have all these adventures where they're tracking down these new bloods, and I'm going to try not to give away the ending of this, but I will say that I am finding Mare to be a very difficult character to like. And she's not really the most likable person. Even in the first book, she was a struggle to really like. I feel like the author was trying to maybe harness a little bit of Katniss Everdeen from the Hunger Games, but Katniss had some endearing qualities to her, and I'm not getting a whole lot of those out of Mare. And as they're on this crusade to get these new bloods and to defeat Maven, she's just really kind of turned into a cold and heartless person, and I'm struggling with that a lot. I find Cal, who is the other prince who he was made to kill his father by his stepmother, and he's on the run because he's supposedly a traitor of the blood, and he's Maven's older brother. I find him to be a lot more relatable and a lot more endearing. lived this charmed life, but yet he kind of understands the life of others, and he still maintains who he is through all of this, even though these terrible things have happened to him. And I feel like Mare has really lost herself a lot. So that's been kind of a hard one to stomach and to deal with, because I'm not liking her as a character very well. And I don't know, if you've read or listened to this series, I would love to hear your comments on this and what you think of Mare as a character, because I'm just struggling with her as a character overall. I guess there's not a whole lot more I want to say to this, other than the way that it ends is definitely a surprise, or at least it was to me. I didn't really suspect that this was coming. It's taking kind of a different route and a different flavor from other novels and series in this genre, which is kind of like a post-apocalyptic fantasy sort of thing. I don't really know how to classify it. So it kind of is losing a little bit of its steam for me. I am curious to see how the third book's gonna go. I don't have that available for me on audiobook through my library services at this time, so I'm probably gonna wait on that one, because I'm not gonna like pick up this book and sit down and read it. But I will check and see if I can find the third book. I'm not sure how many books there are gonna be in the series. I thought just 3, but it looks like there's a potential for 4. I don't know. I haven't really looked into the series a whole lot. So that was the Glass Sword, the second book in that series. The second book that I finished, I wasn't sure I was going to finish it in time, but then I just finished it off last night. And this is book number 2 in the Saxon stories, and it is The Pale Horseman by Bernard Cornwell. This is a series that I believe it was done by the BBC originally and has been picked up now by Netflix, The Last Kingdom. It's the books that series is based on. And it is telling the story of Uhtred, son of Uhtred, who is from the earldom of Babenberg in Northumbria. And it is set in England in the mid-800s, about the time when the Vikings and the Danes are trying to conquer England. And England is divided up into several kingdoms. Wessex so far is the only kingdom that is holding out against the Vikings. And Uhtred's story is kind of interwoven with the story of Alfred the Great. And if you are not familiar with the British history of this, which I wasn't the most familiar with when I started reading this series, Alfred the Great is the one who is credited in joining all of the kingdoms together and forming a unified England and kind of eliminating all of the sub-kingdoms therein. So I will say, in this book, Uhtred and Alfred are fighting the Vikings again, and it's kind of like their last stand to try to drive them out of Wessex. They have a big battle, and they take a bunch of towns and send Alfred into hiding, and Uhtred joins with Alfred, and they kind of rally out of this swamp to come out and kind of push back the Danes. And that's really the main event that this whole book focuses around. But there's a lot more to it than that, and it's a lot of Uhtred's story. And I will say that Uhtred is really kind of an arrogant jerk, but you still like him and you still want to read his story. And I think Bernard Cornwell does a really good job of portraying this guy who's just this young, pompous jerk. I'd like to insert something else, but we're going to keep this family friendly. And he's had a really tough go of life. He saw his father killed by the Danes, and then he was captured by them himself. He thought he was going to die, but he ended up being raised by one of the earls of the Danes, Earl Ragnar, who treated him like a son, and he loved him. And he was raised as a Dane, but he was still a Saxon, and he still wanted to go back and claim his birthright of Babenberg, which had been taken by his uncle. And so Uhtred is he's young, and he's impulsive, and he's brash, and he's got this warrior instinct, and he's bloodthirsty, but he really wants to go back and reclaim his birthright. And you can see through the books that there is this internal struggle for Uhtred of, who am I? He was raised as a Dane, and so he fights like a Dane, he speaks Danish, he looks like a Dane, but he is Saxon, and he has this homeland that he wants to reclaim. And you can really see this struggle within him of finding his own identity. Is he Dane? Is he Saxon? And it's really hard for him in many ways, I think, to leave the Danes and join up with the Saxons. And it's kind of a matter of circumstance. Had circumstances been different, he very well may have stayed with the Danes and continued along that thread. But as it ends up, he ends up with the Saxons and is kind of working with Alfred and working together to take back the kingdom of Wessex, with his end goal continuing to be taking back Babenberg. And the Pale Horseman ends in a way that is kind of disheartening for Uhtred. It's one of those bittersweet sort of scenarios, and without giving away too much of it, you really feel for him again as he's, given himself for this cause, but then lost so much himself in doing so. I very much enjoy the series. I really have enjoyed the series a lot. I have the third book, Lords of the North, which I may start reading next, or I might read the next book of the Heroes of Olympus that Abby is pushing me to read, because it'll be really quick and pretty lighthearted. So I may read that and then go back and read Lords of the North. I'm not entirely sure yet. Like I said before, I know a lot of my reading is going to get kind of chaotic as I start reading other things for my class that I have to take. So I think that's all I've got to say on the Pale Horseman. I have one book currently in progress because, as I said, I had just finished the Pale Horseman last night, so I haven't picked up another one of those yet. And even the audiobook that I just started listening to, I've only listened to about 30 minutes of it, so I'm not very far into it. And that audiobook is American Gods by Neil Gaiman. I had read this book before several years ago, and I know Starz is making a series about it. And I remember enjoying the book, and I started watching the series, but then I kind of felt like I wanted to go back and check out the book again just to refresh my memory of what's happening. And I was looking for another audiobook. I saw it was on audiobook, and I thought, hey, this will be a good one to listen to, because I have already read it, and I think I'll enjoy listening to this audio adaptation of it. So as I said, I'm not very far into it. To kind of just give you a little basis of it, it's this story of the gods, all of the gods that there are, and kind of how they change and adapt as society changes and adapts. And the main character is Shadow, and he starts off in prison, and he kind of ends up intertwined with some of these gods and kind of ends up on an adventure with them, so to speak. So again, I can't remember a lot of it, and I'm only 20 minutes in, so I can't really go into a whole lot of details other than to say that it's just starting out. Shadow is in prison and he's about to be released. And I know some things that happen after that, but since I can't remember all the details, I'm not going to talk a whole lot about it. But that is the book that I am currently reading, listening to, and that series is on Starz. I did watch the first episode. It seems like it's really well done, and I enjoyed watching that. And so I'll kind of maybe listen and watch along together and just see how it goes and how things follow and play out. So I guess there's not a whole lot more to say about that. Book acquisitions, I don't have any novels or any books that you guys would probably be interested in seeing as acquisitions. I did get a whole bunch of books for the License to Preach class that I'm going to be taking, and I'm not going to show those because I'm not sure how interesting I find them. But that'll be a lot of my reading coming up, so I apologize that this section is going to get pretty thin for a little while. I hopefully once I'm done with the class that this can kind of go back, not to the way it was, just based on simple workload, but at least back so that there's a little bit more content here. So that's all I've got for the reading portion. If this is all you came for, thank you so much for watching. If you are interested in the knitting and life type stuff that will be coming up in the next sections, please stick around. If not, thank you so much for tuning in and enjoy those books. So on to knitting. I do have one finished object this week, and this is a prayer shawl that I was knitting for my pastor's husband. He is any day now going to go off and have a bone marrow transplant, so we're trying to figure out a good way to get this to him because I'm not going to be in church the next couple Sundays for various reasons. And that was the Boneyard Shawl by Stephen West. And again, I have to laugh because it's a Stephen West pattern, and it's like so not very Stephen Westy. It's a free pattern on Ravelry. It's very simple, stockinette with a ridge, nothing fancy to it, nothing too crazy, but I thought it made a nice prayer shawl for a man. The yarn that I used is Lion brand Heartland yarn. It's 100% acrylic. With him having a bone marrow transplant, I really wasn't sure what would be okay for him to have, and I didn't want any weird allergy things happening with wool. So I really thought acrylic was the best way to go. The colorway is called Olympic, and it's this like really beautiful rich blue. I did block it, but it's acrylic, so it didn't really change it a whole lot. It maybe gave it a little bit more drape to it. And I knit these on my Knit Picks interchangeable set. I used a US size 10, which is a 6mm needle, which is a little bigger than what worsted weight calls for, but it gave it a nice kind of drape to it. And I think it turned out really nice. I like it. I think he will like it a lot, and I hope it brings him a lot of peace and a lot of joy going through this really, really scary time. I have two works in progress. The first one that I'm going to show you, I showed you last time because it was a hoe, but I haven't gotten very far on it, and it is living in my purple unicorn bag from Lara the Fawn and the Fox. And these are my double snare socks. So this is the finished one. Not sure how well you can see it with this weird gloomy weather lighting. So this is the first one. It's got a pretty simple intuitive lace pattern that makes kind of a cool texture across the top of the foot. So that's the first one. And then the second one, I'm not very far. I have yarn tangled all over the place. I just have the cuff and like one repeat of the lace pattern done. So these are, as I said, they're the Devil Snare Socks by Erica Luter. They are a free pattern on Ravelry. You may be familiar with Erica Luter. She wrote the Hermione's Everyday Socks, which are very, very popular. I really loved knitting those, and I am really loving knitting these Devil Snare Socks. Yarn is Knit Picks Hawthorne, the Mount Tabor colorway. Let's see if I can get this. It's a really nice tonal green. This is 100% superwash wool and nylon, so it's got a little bit of a woolly texture to it, not quite as soft as merino, but still feels quite nice. Knitting these on Hiya Sharps. These are US 1.5, 2.5 millimeter, which is my sock needle of choice. I just find that I have a tighter gauge, and ones get to be a little too dense. I like the drape of the fabric I get with the 1.5s, and they fit my feet really well. I have my sock specifications totally down now, and I love the fit of them. These do use a heel flap and gusset with like the modified partridge heel, and I like that heel a lot. I like the fit of that heel, but I'm also finding that the Fish Lips Kiss heel fits me really well too. So I kind of see what mood I'm in. If I'm knitting socks one at a time, then I'm okay with doing the heel flap and gusset. But if I'm knitting socks two at a time, I have found heel flap and gusset to be very fiddly. I have to separate the two socks and do the heel separately, so I tend to do Fish Lips Kiss for anything that I'm doing two at a time. So, oh, that reminds me, I do have one other work in progress that I can show you that I haven't shown in a while. So I'm gonna go get that and show that next. These, I know I have shown once before, and like a long time ago. And these are just a pair of plain vanilla socks. These are my Mindless knit socks. So this is what they are. I've got heels in them now, and I'm just working on going up the leg. They're probably not going to be very tall. I'm using up scrap yarn. So this is yarn, this is also Knit Picks Hawthorne, and this is yarn left over from my exploration station. So the toes, that is just a black, and it's called Blackbird. And then this is called Cosmic Speckle. And so I wanted to do, I've never done contrasting heels, cuffs, and toes. So this is my first experience with that. So here is, having a hard time with this. So yeah, so here is the sock. I've got the heel done, or the toe done, and the heel. I did Fish Lips Kiss heel for this. You can't really see it on the black. And I'm working up the leg. I haven't decided if I'm gonna make the cuffs be black or if I'm just gonna stick with the speckle. I don't have a ton of it left. I've got it in two balls, and they're at the end and kind of falling apart. So there's not a ton of this left. So I don't know if I'm just gonna knit until this runs out and then put on the cuff, because I do have a good amount. So each skein has about that much of the black left. So I have plenty to do cuffs with the black. Or I could save the black and probably use them to do toes and heels for another pair of socks later on. I don't know what I'll do. Part of it will depend on how high up the sock goes. I don't like really tall socks, so if I'm going and I'm, you know, it's getting too tall, then I might just do the cuff in this. I haven't really decided. This will be to be determined. So they're just, like I said, plain vanilla socks, movie knitting, mindless knitting. They haven't gone very fast because they don't get worked on a ton. They are sitting on my Addy Turbo sock rockets, also US 1.5, 2.5 millimeter. And I go back and forth between whether I like the sock rockets or the Hiya Sharps better. I like them both, and I think they both have their place. I think the sock rockets are a little nicer for coarser yarn because there's not as much drag on them, where the Hiya Sharps have a tiny bit of drag to them. So more slippery yarn like merino cashmere nylon was really nice to use on those because they had a little bit of a drag. But with this, that's that's superwash wool. The Hiyas, or the Addy Turbos, I think I like better because they slide and move a little bit better and more easily, if that makes any sense. So these are just plain old boring vanilla socks living in my Estee Lauder makeup bag, which is acting as a project bag for me. So my last work in progress is from Joji Locatelli's, her mystery knit along that she's doing right now, the Starting Point shawl. So what I'm going to show is all of Clue 1, which came out last week. Clue 2 just came out like late last night. I haven't started any of Clue 2 or even looked at Clue 2 yet, and I didn't want to show any of Clue 2 on the episode. But I'm giving you a warning right now that I'm showing Clue 1. If you do not want to see this at all, either look away or skip ahead to the acquisitions portion, because I don't want to ruin anything for you if you do not want to see this. And I will talk a little tiny bit about the design, but not a whole lot. Mostly I'll talk about the yarns that I'm going to be using. So right now, if you don't want to see clue 1, skip ahead, look away, here's your chance. Okay. So clue 1 of the starting point shawl was really fun. I really enjoyed it, and it was kind of interesting. And this is it. And this is my watermelon shawl. So, because it looks like a watermelon right now, and that's what Abby called it, and she's absolutely right. And I even have a watermelon stitch, a watermelon, oh, what are these called? Progress keeper, there we go, that's the word. So this is the first clue. There are 2 of these. I'm really curious to see how they come together. I'm guessing that's going to be part of clue 2. So the first yarn that I used is from the Forbidden Woolery, and it's their Charity base, which is 100% superwash merino, and this is the Forest of Dean. The next color, I really wanted to use this for this section, but looking at the yardage that I needed, I was really afraid I wasn't going to have enough yardage and I didn't want to run out, so I switched things around a little bit, but I think I'm okay with it. So this is from Beautiful Mess Yarnworks, and it is called the Get Down, and it is this beautiful like bright green with yellow and hot pink and dark green speckles in it. I love this yarn. I think I want to order like another skein of it in sock yarn, and like real sock yarn, because this is just 100% superwash merino. And I would like some with nylon in it. It's a single ply, so it's giving some really nice stitch definition here. The next one, this next section, so the rest of these are going to be Knit Picks Stroll. This is called High Tea. It's this really cool hot pink. This one right here is Aurora Heather. And then this for this section here is called Mountain Pass. And it definitely looks like a watermelon, but I like it. I wasn't sure how the Forest of Dean was going to go with this, but I am really liking the way these colors are playing together. I think it's looking like a fun shawl. It'll be really cool to see how it turns out and how it knits up. My plan is that this is going to be the last prayer shawl that I do for my current church, and it may be the last prayer shawl I really do for a long time because of everything changing. But I want to get this done, and the woman who likes it really likes green, and so I'm going to try really hard to stick with how the clues come out so that I will have this done in time. So you can look back now. If you were looking away, you're not going to see anything for the shawl. And clue 2 came out. I'm really excited to check that out and see how that goes. That's going to be my plan for the rest of today, is just kind of relax and do some knitting on clue 2. I do have one acquisition to show, and the yarn acquisitions are definitely going to be decreasing significantly as things are, again, shifting in my life. I keep talking about it, but it's kind of major, and it's really impacting like every avenue of life that I'm in. And so over here. So this is a package that came from Nora George Yarns, and she is based out of England. And she worked together with Madeline of Kingfisher Knits, and they did a collaboration for Madeline's pattern called the Patronus Shawl. And Tracy of Nora George dyed up these kits for that. And I decided, I saw KT of Inside Number 23, she knit one, and I loved the pattern, and it just really spoke to me. So I decided to order one of her kits. And I went back and forth between the 2 kits that I wanted. One was really screamed me because it was like blue, and it had like blue speckled yarn, but then the other one had more like of a natural earthy tones to it and was really beautiful and really high contrast. And in the end I decided to go with that because I don't really have any shawls that are more natural tones. So I ordered Harry and James's Stag. And this is it. It is so beautiful. I can't even begin to tell you. So the first color is this contrast color, and it's this rich mahogany kind of a color. It's got a little bit, because it's a mahogany, it's got a little bit of like a purpley undertone to it. It's just a nice warm brownish color, and that's one of the colors. And then this is the other one, and look at this. Oh, it's so beautiful. It's got, so the yarn base is kind of a natural base, but then it's got this like caramel in there, and some green and darker brown, and it just, oh, it's so beautiful. It's so soft. It is a merino nylon blend, and I cannot wait to cast this on. I don't know when I am going to get to, but I am so excited to knit this, and it just, the knit looks so fun and cool. The construction is like on the bias, like side to side, so you don't end up with a bajillion stitches on the needles. I think it's a pretty quick knit. I'm really looking forward to casting it on and trying it out. So I don't know when, soon I hope. I don't know, there's so much to do and not enough hours in the day to do it. I want to knit all the things. Yeah, so that's that. That's my acquisition. I know I do have one more skein of the Harry Potter Yarn Club that's supposed to be coming in the mail, and I expect that'll be here anytime. Maybe even today. I'll go to the post office later. You'll see that on my vlogcast if it's there. If not, you will definitely see it next week or 2 weeks from now on the podcast. So that's my acquisitions. And that is all I have for the reading and the knitting portion of the podcast. I'm going to talk a little bit about some stuff going on in my life now, so if you're not interested in that, thank you so much for watching and checking me out. If you haven't already, please hit subscribe, give me a thumbs up, and thank you so much for spending some time with me. So life is getting crazy, and it's exciting and it's scary all at the same time. So I mentioned last podcast that I was starting off a new career as a pastor in the Methodist Church. I've been assigned to 2 churches. We will be moving. I do not have a move date yet, which is making me slightly anxious because I'd like to have one. It's looking like it's probably going to be like the last week of June, but I'm not sure. My appointment officially starts July 1st, and my first Sunday in the pulpit will be July 9th. So I'm excited and scared and all of those things. It also means that I have to go to License to Preach school, and that is going to start in July. And I got the syllabus for that, and I have something like 20 assignments that I have to have done before July 1st. And so all the books for that came this week, so I can start really working on that. I've been working on papers that I could write without needing any books, but I kind of had reached the end of that, and then the books came, so here we go. I'm ready to go. I will say that I have not been in school for many years now, and it is definitely taking some time to kind of knock the rust off my brain and get myself back into that mindset. I'm like trying to write these 1-page papers. I'm like, wow, this is taking me forever. When did I get so slow? So definitely taking some time to kind of get the wheels going again and getting things back to to being something functional and normal. But it's exciting at the same time. The kids, their school is wrapping up. We're kind of coming down to the end of it, so things are really busy. May is super busy time. So football's wrapping up, school's wrapping up, Abby's gonna have her last band concert pretty soon. It's just been a really exciting year, a lot that's happened, and we're gonna get to go have a new start, and I think that's gonna be a really big deal. I'm really looking forward to it, but as I said, I'm kind of scared as well, and I don't know, I have these moments where I'm all like, I can totally do this, and then I have these moments where I'm like, there's no way I can do this. I have to go be a spiritual leader of 2 churches, and it's a struggle. It's a big struggle. And one of the things that I struggle with is, I've made mistakes in my life. Everyone has, but some of mine have been big and obvious, and people can see those mistakes where other people's mistakes aren't necessarily as public. And I worry about that a lot going forward in this and what that means for my credibility. And there's just a lot of things that make me doubt myself. I'm trying really hard not to, because everything has lined up exactly how I've needed it for this. Everything that I've needed has kind of been provided for me, and I just have to kind of buck up and have the faith that I can do this, and this is what I'm supposed to be doing, and this is what's going to be best, not just for me, but for my kids as well. So this is a little more personal than I usually get, but that's definitely something that I'm struggling with. Yeah, it's really scary to start a whole new career and start again at the beginning, and especially with one that involves other people and you impacting other people. It's a little scary. So here I go. I can't think of anything else. I think I've gone on long enough. So thank you everyone for watching. I really appreciate it. You guys mean a lot to me. I want to thank everyone for the love and the support. I'm sorry if I have not responded to any comments. Things have been really hectic and busy. I'm going to try and do that and get those responses to people. So again, I apologize. I've seen them. I'm not ignoring them, I promise. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope everyone has a great couple of weeks. I hope you enjoy the weather as it's getting warmer and nicer, and just enjoy the last bit of spring, and happy knitting, happy reading, and you hopefully will see another little vlogcast from me next week. If not, I'll see you in 2 weeks for a podcast. Bye!